If you have to tell people that you're in charge, you're not in charge.
Law number 4 is the law of navigation. And the law of navigation says anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. I've often described leadership in kind of two terms. There's what I call the art form of leadership, and then there's a technical form of leadership. The law of navigation is a technical form of leadership. It's very tangible. It's point A to point B to point C. For example, the law of timing or the law of intuition, that's art form of leadership. It's much more subjective. It's much harder to get your hands around it. But Jack Welch was exactly right when he said, a good leader remains focused. Controlling your destination is better than being controlled by it. So let's study for a few minutes the law of navigation. I brought with me something I read the other day that I just love, and I want to pass it on to you. So just kind of sit and relax for a moment. Let me just read you this I think, humorous story. A man in a hot air balloon realized that he was lost. He reduced altitude and spotted a woman below. He descended a bit more and he shouted, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend that I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The woman below replied, "You're in a hot air balloon, hovering approximately 30 feet above the ground. You're between 40 and 41 degrees north latitude and between 59 and 60 degrees west longitude." "You must be an engineer," said the balloonist. "I am," replied the woman. "How did you know?" "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of your information. And the fact is, I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help at all. If anything, you've delayed my trip." The woman below responded, "You must be in management." You can see the train a coming, can't you? Said, "You must be in management." "I am," replied the balloonist. "But how did you know?" "Well," said the woman, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You have risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise which you have no idea how to keep, and you expect people beneath you to solve your problems. And the fact is, you are in exactly the same position you were in before we met, but now somehow it's my fault." Isn't that great, huh? When I think of the law of navigation, trying to get from one point to another, there's one thing, of course, that we have to understand, and that is, if anybody is going to be a good leader and navigate, you have to know where you are. And again, I referred to on an earlier law, the Mr. Magoo thing. I mean, let me tell you something. When you get on the ship, you don't want to look up and see that the captain is Mr. Magoo.
Whoa, how long you been wearing glasses?
It just kind of is a little bit unsettling, and the reason for that is, in your notes, there are 3 statements I want to make, and the 3 statements are these. A leader is one who sees more than others see. That's a fact. That's part of leadership. What do leaders do? They see the big picture. Is that not true? But the second statement, a leader is one who sees farther than others see. In other words, a leader is a person who looks out and he can see distant horizon and has great vision. But the third thought I want you to know is that a leader is one who sees before others see. It's also a timing issue. And one of the qualities of a leader is you put them in a room, they sense things. They sense things quicker than others sense them. It's not an IQ issue. It's not that they're smarter. It's just the fact that they have leadership within them, and they sense a need before others sense a need. They sense an opportunity before others sense an opportunity. So what do leaders do? Especially if you're a good navigating leader, you see more than others see, you see farther than others see, and you see before others see. That's what good leaders do. What I have found about great navigational leaders is they're highly realistic, because they realize they have the responsibility of taking other people on a trip where they have never gone before, and they understand that they have to have experience and success. In fact, there's a world of difference. Think about it for a moment. There's a world of difference between a travel agent and a tour guide. You know, a travel agent, they get your tickets for you, and they get brochures for you, and they send you on a trip. You know what? They send you and me on trips every day of places they've never been before. You know what I'm saying? They bon voyage and have a good trip, and here are your tickets, and hope everything turns out right. Well, what travel agents, they send you where they've never been before. But a tour guide, when you go to the place you arrived at this place, you have a tour guide. You know what a tour guide basically says, I'm going to take you where I've been many times before. And I'm going to tell you about what I know. See, the great navigating leaders are leaders who they've been there and they've done that. But they're not in a been there, done that. You know, haven't you run people who kind of go around, well, been there, done that, been there, done, and they're bored. You know what I'm saying? You kind of say, well, you've been there too many times. You've done that too many times. Are you with me? So we've seen the been there. No. The great navigational leaders, they're been there, done that, but their excitement is taking people with them on the journey. I was just last week with Jim Winokur, who was the first American to go climb Mount Everest. And when we're sitting down around the table and having a wonderful lunch together, and I was asking Jim about some of his experiences, I'm just listening because he just has incredible experiences. And I said, what are you most proud of? I mean, you've been to Mount Everest on more than one occasion, the top. I said, what are you most proud of? And he said, John, what I'm most proud of is, he said, I have taken more people to the top of Mount Everest than any other person. And I thought, there is a true navigator. There's a person who understands that my joy isn't getting to the top. Been there, done that. My joy is getting other people to go to the top with me. And think about it for a moment. That's what navigators do. How many of you have ever heard the expression, it's lonely at the top? Huh? You've heard that, haven't you? Now, every time we hear the expression, it's lonely at the top, we think that a leader said that. A leader didn't say that. Think about it for a moment. If you're lonely, if you're all by yourself at the top, you're not leading anybody. If you're at the top all alone, here's the thought, get off of the top and go down to where the people are. Go down and find your team and take your team to the top with you. That's what leaders do. I developed a wonderful process that's helped me to navigate that I want to give to you. And in your notes, I want to walk you through this wonderful, wonderful step-by-step process of how to plan ahead. Are you ready? The letter P. The letter P stands for predetermine your course of action. In other words, as a leader, what do? The first thing I do is I determine where do I want to go. I don't wait till the crowd's saying let's go somewhere and then say where do I want to go. What's a leader do? Leaders predetermine. They think before others think. They see before others see. They've got that leadership edge. So predetermine your course of action. The letter L, lay out your goals. Basically, goals are nothing more than stepping stones. They're a process. So when I say lay out your goals, what I'm talking about basically is this. Use each one of your goals as stepping stones. So if I use this little platform for a moment, my goal is to get back up to the bar stool, basically I say, okay, here's goal 1 and here's goal 2. In other words, lay out your goals, develop them. Now, as soon as you lay out your goals, letter A comes into being. Because as soon as you lay out your goals, the letter A stands for adjust your priorities. I found this to happen. Now, I've been doing this now for 25 years, and here's what I found to happen. I found that every time I lay out my goals and predetermine course of action, I realize I have to adjust my priorities. Because you know what I'm doing? I'm doing things that are never going to get me there. You follow me? And I say, oh my goodness, John, why are you doing this? Because if you're wanting to really get there, so this is your destination, you're carrying extra weight. So predetermine course of action, lay out your goals, adjust your priorities, okay. The letter N, notify key personnel. Very simple. Take your key personnel and sit down and talk to them and notify and share the vision. For example, if this is my team again, what I do is I sit down and say, hey, gang, here's what I'm thinking. Here's the dream. Here's the vision. What do you think? And if your team is good, you know what they'll do? They'll take what you give them and they'll give it to you back better than you gave it to them. Isn't that right? They always make it better. When anybody asks me, says, John, how do I know that I have a good team around me? I can tell you how you know you have a good team around you. Every time you give them something, they give it back to you at a higher level. They take and stretch and grow you. But you notify your key personnel. In other words, you have your key meeting. You have your meeting before the meeting. Oh, that's a huge lecture in itself. But you got to always have a meeting before the meeting, because if you don't have your meeting before the meeting, you're going to have a very bad meeting. Notify keepers now. Letter A, allow time for acceptance. Because it's going to take a while. So allow time for acceptance. I can promise you, people change slowly. So give them time to kind of digest and process that in their own mind emotionally. Letter H, head into action. Get going. I mean, there comes a time you go. And by the way, leaders have a bias toward action. And so leaders love the head into action part. They say, okay, now it's time. We've been thinking and planning long enough. Let's go. Head into action. And as soon as you head into action, the letter E comes into place. Watch this one. Expect problems. The moment you create movement in the organization, the moment that you take action, expect problems. And somebody asked me one time in a conference, they raised their hand and said, John, why? Okay, help me out here. They said, when you say expect problems, why should I have problems when I head into action? I said, it's very simple. Motion causes friction. And the moment that you head into action, somebody realizes they're going to have to make changes. Head into action. Get going. Expect problems. I got problems. You got problems. We all got problems. Okay, expect those problems because they're going to happen. Okay? And as you expect those problems and as you're moving forward, understand it's not because you haven't learned. It's not because you're being a bad leader. It's not because you haven't done things well. It's just because problems happen to all of us. Let me just take a little poll here. How many of you as a leader have at least one problem?
Houston, we have a problem.
I was talking to a leader recently and he was complaining about the problems. I said, don't complain about the problems. I said, think about it. That's why you have a job. If everybody was doing the right thing, probably they wouldn't need you. This is a good thing that you have problems, but after expecting problems, always point to your successes. Always point to your successes, and the reason for that's very simple. Because you got somebody in the company that will point to your failures, okay? This gives hope to your people. This encourages your people. And then finally, the letter D, daily review your progress. Daily review it. Sit down and say, okay, how am I doing? Am I farther along today than I was yesterday? I have found that the secret of navigation is preparation. And the best navigating leaders are those who spend time preparing themselves so that they can effectively take their people on the trip.
I was a sales associate at E.F. Hutton.
Now, a couple of these laws in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership are related. For example, I have found that the Law of E.F. Hutton is closely related to the law of influence. Remember, the law of influence basically says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. The law of E.F. Hutton says when the real leader speaks, people listen. But let me talk to you about this for a moment because I have found that this is a key in understanding people. What I have found is that if you get in a group of people and there's a decision to be made, the people in that group will automatically look at who the real leader is. They just will. For example, let's just say Bridget is the real leader on the team, okay? What's your name?
Rob.
Rob John's my name. Nice to meet you. Okay. Rob, let's say we're in this group, and Bridget's the real leader, but Chuck he's kind of got the floor. He's talking about something that he'd like to see passed on the team level or whatever. Okay, now, if Chuck's talking about something he thinks very important, and maybe it's a budget item, and maybe he's wanting some more money for his area or whatever it is, okay, here's what I'm saying. If Chuck's talking about something that's very important, of which a decision is going to have to be made, but if Bridget is the true leader, I mean, she's the real leader, she's the influencer, she's the E.F. Hutton, it's Bridget E.F. Hutton, okay? Got the picture? Here's what I found. You and the rest of the team, while Chuck's talking, are watching Bridget. Because what you're doing is she is the E.F. Hutton. She is the real leader. And you're watching Bridget because she's going to, by her actions, give you some kind of sense of if she's excited about this or not. Does it make sense? And if for example, if Bridget starts nodding while Chuck is talking, the rest of us, we kind of smile a little bit and we start nodding while Chuck is talking. And Chuck's talking. You know what Chuck's thinking? He's thinking he's doing a good job. Chuck's saying, oh, this is really good. They're really, hey, I'm glad I prepared this speech. I'm really doing good here. Well, Chuck, you're doing good, but that isn't why we're excited. See, we're nodding because E.F. Hutton, Bridget here, the real leader, She's nodding, and we're getting her signals from her. Just ask Chuck if you were given the same speech, and Bridget's got her arms crossed, and you know, it's kind of like, no, we don't want to do that, you know, we're not. And we all start crossing our arms, and Chuck, you start saying, man, I'm not doing a very good job with this. Well, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. You see, the issue is not whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. The issue is that E.F. Hutton either likes it or don't like it, and we take our signals always from the real leader. Now, let me just explain for a moment. This is very key in leadership. Let me give you a pointer here, Chuck, that'll help you. If you've got a proposal and you want the rest of our team here to buy into your proposal, what you really need to do before you have the meeting with us, you need to take Bridget to lunch. And you need to have a meeting with her. And you need to be saying, Bridget, I just want you to understand that this is important. And you want to get her buy-in. In fact, Chuck, if you're a smart leader, when you come to the meeting, if you've had the meeting before the meeting, again, remember? If you had the meeting before me, if you're really smart, when you do it, you'll say something like to the rest of the team, you'll say, team, by the way, Bridget and I have talked about this. And we think it's a good idea. Woo! That does a lot. See, because all great leaders take the vision, Chuck, from me to we. And until the vision is a vision of we, it's not a great vision. And what you need to do is you need to understand who the influencers are. You need to know who the E.F. Huttons are. And this is very key because what I have found in leading now for 30 years, I have found that a leader's responsibility is to pick out who the E.F. Huttons are. And you know what? Bridget may be one of the influencers, maybe one of the E.F. Huttons. What's your name, sir? Jay? Yes. Jay may be one of the influencers. And see, as a leader, I say, okay, man, I need Jay in this project. I need Bridget in this project. What's your name, sir? Tommy. I might say, okay, I got to have Tommy in this project. Okay, what I do is, here's what I want you to know. There may be a couple hundred people in the studio, but what you have to know is you have to go to the influencers. And if it's Jay, and if it's Tommy, and if it's Bridget, if these are the people that are the influencers, I need to bring them in because they're the E.F. Huttons. And when they speak, they're going to carry the ball for me. In fact, here's the way I have always tried to do it as a leader. I've never had a meeting with everybody until I've had meetings with the key people. And if what I would do is I'd walk into a room like this and I would say, listen, gang, I'm very excited about a vision. I'm very excited about something I want to share with you. In fact, for the last couple of days, Jay and Tommy and Bridget and I have been talking together. And what we've decided is this is the best way for the organization. In fact, let me tell you something. Tommy gave me a thought on this that's just tremendous, and I'll throw in a Tommy thought. And you know what? When we talked about this, Bridget said we ought to do this. And Jay, what you said the other day about this, you know what I'm doing? I'm tying them all in. So they're not just following me. They're following E.F. Hutton Jay. And they're following E.F. Hutton Bridget. And they're following E.F. Hutton Tommy. Because the real leaders have the influence, and when the real leader speaks, people listen. Haven't you seen this happen where somebody stands up and speaks, and as they're speaking, nobody's paying any attention? Huh? Haven't you seen that? You know, I mean, I've watched them. You know, somebody's up there just speaking, and nobody's home. Nobody's home. In fact, there's been a lot of times I wanted to stand and say, excuse me, sir, excuse me. None of us are home. I know you're exercising your jaw a little bit, but we're not listening. Remember, I'm kind of old, so I remember there used to be a TV show called The Gong Show. Yeah. And what happens, somebody's up there speaking, and when people get tired of speaking, somebody could take like a big mallet and go over and gong that sucker, and they had to be done. I've always thought, every business meeting needs a gong show. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And when somebody's up there and you're just tired of hearing, you say, could I have the mallet, please? Could I have the mallet? Not the ballot, please, the mallet, please. And just go over and gong that sucker and let it be done. Let it be done. Because the law of E.F. Hutton said, when the real leader speaks, people listen. That's why it's so important for you and I to understand that we've got to be more than positional leaders. And in your notes, let me explain the difference between positional leaders and real leaders. Positional leaders have a title, but not always a following. Where real leaders have a following, but not always a title. Positional leaders influence positional people. I've seen that happen all the time. Oh, you're Dr. So-and-so. Well, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Here's my card. Here's your card.
I am a doctor.
The only people, a lot of times, positional people lead or control or influence are positional people. But real leaders, they influence everyone. In fact, let me put it this way. When you have to tell people that you're the leader of the pack, you're not. And every once in a while I have somebody say, well, you know, I just have to declare my leadership. I just have to stand up and say, hey, 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 hey. I'm the leader. Follow? That's why I love the leadership proverb. It says, he that thinketh he leadeth and hath no one following him is only taking a walk. And don't you know, okay, people taking walks? Why? They're taking walks because they're not E.F. Hutton. So what makes a real leader? What defines a real leader? Look at your notes, because I think this is huge. Real leaders become real leaders because of character. In other words, who they are. Real leaders become real leaders because of relationships, who they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of knowledge, what they know. Real leaders become real leaders because of intuition, what they feel. Real leaders become real leaders because of experience, where they've been. Real leaders become real leaders because of past successes, what they've done. And real leaders become real leaders because of ability, what they can do. What I've just shared with you about real leaders becoming real leaders, spend some time there. Ask yourself, am I a person of character? Do I have good relationships with people around me? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I sense what's happening to those around me? Do I have good experience? Have I had some good wins under my belt and some past experiences? And do I have just good, decent ability? Because the law of E.F. Hutton says, when the real leader speaks, people listen.
Do you trust me?
Trust is the glue that holds an organization and the leader together. It's the glue. And I want to talk to you about trust, and I want to talk to you about integrity. I want to talk to you about character. And in fact, to build trust in your notes, there are two things that you must, as a leader, be able to do. You must demonstrate consistent competence. Obviously, you have to consistently be competent in the area in which you're leading. And secondly, you have to demonstrate consistent character. You have to consistently be a person of integrity. And I can think of no law that probably is more important to share with you than this law. And so allow me just to talk to you about a couple of experiences I've had. Recently, I was being interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, and the person that was interviewing me said, John, I would like to talk to you about business ethics.
I choose business ethics.
They said, you know, in corporate America, things are not going real well, and there are a lot of leaders that have probably violated the trust factor. So he said, if you don't mind, I'd like to do about a 30-minute interview with you on business ethics. And I know I shocked him, and I said, we don't need a 30-minute interview on business ethics because there's no such thing as business ethics.
Excuse me? A baking powder?
It got real quiet on the end of the phone. And the interviewer said, well, I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, all this business ethics that we've had and all the corporate side and how that these leaders are just not really trustworthy. And they said, I want you to talk to me about business ethics. And again, I said, I'll be glad to talk to you. But I said, there's no such thing as business ethics.
Come again?
And then I said, there's just ethics. You either have it or you don't. And can I tell you something? If you have ethics, guess what? It works in business. And if you don't have ethics, It doesn't work in business. If you have ethics, it works in your community. If you don't have it, it doesn't work in the community. There's no such thing as family ethics or community ethics or business. No. There's just ethics. You got it or you don't. You're either a person of integrity or you're not. You're either a person that has character or you're a person that doesn't have character. And then we got into an amazing, wonderful 35-minute conversation about integrity and character and ethics. Now, what I want you to understand about this law of solid ground is that it's character and it's also competence. I don't in any way want to take away from the issue of competence. You have to consistently perform well if you're going to lead. And you have to consistently do right if you're going to lead. And you can't substitute, you can't say, okay, I'm a person of character. I want you follow me because I'm true to my word. I won't tell you a lie. I'm a great person of integrity. Oh, by the way, I'm a lousy leader. I'm not competent, but follow me. Can I tell you, I don't want to follow somebody that has great character and low competence. Do you? You know, the good news is you can trust them. The bad news is you trust them in bad places because they didn't lead you well. So it's not like I want to have you to have character without competence, but I also don't want you to have competence. In other words, be a very good leader, understand and have leadership skills and abilities. I don't want you to be a great leader and lack character because I'm not going to be able to trust you. And one won't substitute for the other. And what we have to understand about the law of solid ground is that in the law of solid ground, grow and get better in this area and increase our trust level, or we decrease it and we become worse in it. And the best way, I think the best way to explain this, perhaps, is to illustrate it. And if you allow me, Chuck, let me illustrate with you, okay? The best way I can explain this law is building trust is like having change in your pocket, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, let's say that I've just come to the company. I'm the new kid on the block. And I have a kind of a leadership position, and you want me to do well, and Chuck, you're kind of like chairman of the board or whatever it is. Okay, so anyway, what you do is you give me X amount of change of which I am to operate. In other words, you feel I'm trustworthy. You hired me because of character. So okay, and what you're going to do is I'm going to either, because I'm a trustworthy person when I come to the company, I'm going to either increase the change or I'm going to decrease the change. For example, let's say I don't have very good character. I lack integrity. I'm not trustworthy. I don't always tell the truth. And so let's say, I've been here maybe 3 or 4 months and you ask me about a report of which I make an excuse which you know is not true. Well, every time I do something that's not trustworthy, I give up some change out of my pocket. Do you see what I'm saying? But it's okay because I still have change. And as long as I have change, I can still operate because there's a certain level of trust I still have. But let's say a month or two later, you find that I'm not trustworthy in another area. And perhaps I've gone over to Bridget's office, and again, she comes to you and says, you know what, I don't think he's truthful with me in this matter. Well, every time what happens is, every time I don't do well, I give up change. But it's okay because I still have some change. See, as long as I have change in my pocket, I can operate. Well, let's say a few more months go by, and now there are other people who are beginning to talk about the fact that I'm not probably a person of my word, and that they're not sure they can really trust me. And so you talk to me about it. And so now what happens is there's a day when I do something I shouldn't have done, and I walk into your office, and what I've been doing is I've been using my change. I've been living off of goodwill. You follow me? I've been living off of the slack that you gave me. And this time, Chuck, I come in the office and you say, John, here's another issue, and I reach automatically. What I do, I reach in my pocket. And isn't it interesting? Instead of changing my ways, I want to live off of goodwill. And this time, when I reach in my pocket this time, and when I do it this time, this is a picture of a leader in trouble. I'm out of gas. I have no more change in my pocket. It's over. I'm going to have to go to a new organization. Why? Because I have used up the change in my pocket. Now, as I can deplete it by doing things lacking character and lacking integrity, it's also true that if I do things that show character, I increase my change. I was just reading the other day, and this is huge. about a CEO that told his employees, brought together a company meeting, and he said, let me tell you something. If anybody in this company asks you to do anything that's wrong, here's my personal phone number. And anybody ever asks you to tell a lie, anybody ever asks you to fudge a report, anybody ever asks you something that violates your integrity, he said, you don't need to go to your supervisor. He said, you call me immediately. I thought, what a huge statement. Well, Chuck, if I'm trustworthy, and you begin to see that I am a person of my word, and that I do follow through, and I do take responsibility, what happens is you start giving me some change. And so when Chuck is now giving me back change, he looks through all the bills and gives me a 5 back. I mean, Chuck, he's very stingy now. He's slowly, he's all right. Here's 5, here's 5. Now, let me just stop here for a moment, because Chuck and I didn't plan this at all. We're just talking. But I want to tell you something. This is exactly the way it works. Listen very carefully. In the area of character, you lose it a lot quicker than you get it back. And when you start violating issues of integrity with people, and they begin to realize that you've probably manipulated them, violated them, I promise you, that as you try to build that trust level back, they'll dole it out $1 at a time. You lose it a lot quicker than you gain it. Does that make sense? Yes. Now, what's happening here in this illustration with Chuck is, if I continue to be trustworthy, Chuck will give me a little bit more change. And you're still going to the lowest dollars, aren't you? Huh? And I say thank you. And by the way, every time he gives me a little bit of change, boy, I've got more change in my pocket. And then we come up with another time, and I'm just showing trustworthiness. I'm showing character. I'm showing integrity. I'm making right decisions. Maybe not even good for me, but good for the company. And I get a little more. And every time, boy, Chuck. And you know what? After a while, I start liking our meetings. Because I'm liking our meetings because I'm gaining change. I had a guy one time tell me, he said, well, I don't like my board meetings. I don't like my meetings when I get the key players together. And I said, it's because you're losing change. Let me tell you something. If you're losing change with people, you don't like meeting with them. But if you're getting change, if you go to a meeting, you're going to get some more bucks, huh? Well, you say, this is going to be a good meeting. See, you're either building in, you're either depositing, or you're withdrawing in this area of solid ground and trust. And so I do well, and I get a little bit more. And this is the 4th time you've given me something. 3 times I had all the money to you, and it's taken, but I do well, and I keep coming back, and finally I get that last piece. Now here's what I want you to see. Here's what I want you to see. You're on solid ground when you walk around your company, or you walk around your department, or your place of business, and your pockets are loaded with change. In fact, if you have to walk around with a limp, why are you limping? Well, I'm just loaded with change. That's your goal. In fact, the goal of a leader is to increase his or her change in their pocket. In fact, let me say this. Hang on, here we go. You cannot make changes in the organization unless you have change in your pocket. It takes a lot of change in your pocket to make big changes in your company. Isn't that true? But if there's a high integrity level, and there's a lot of trust level, and the law of solid ground is there, you can make a lot of huge changes. It could be very, very successful, but it takes change in your pocket to make changes in your organization. And I want you just to take a moment and look at a couple of statements I have in your notes. Statements such as, a leader cannot continually break trust with people and continue to influence them. Oh, the questions are huge. Questions such as, do I have change in my pocket? Is my change increasing or decreasing? Do I pass the integrity test? Somebody says, what's the integrity test, John? The integrity test is this. With integrity, the longer I lead, the better it gets. Without integrity, the longer I lead, the worse it becomes. That is so true. The law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership.
I trust that these 3 laws, laws 4, 5, and 6 from John Maxwell, the Law of Navigation and the Law of E.F. Hutton and the Law of Solid Ground have added value to your life. I know this book and these series of lectures have helped me immensely over the last few decades. Yes, they're classic lectures, but these are so solid. I hope you'll either get the book if you don't have it and read it, or blow the dust off it and reread it and dig in. And we all aren't good at all 21, but we can improve in usually all of them and probably master a couple of them. So I hope this has been a blessing to you. If it has, please like the video, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you'd be so kind, and I will see you soon with a new video. And until then, I dare you to profit so you can practice and promote radical, revolutionary generosity. Blessings.